Hi, Roberta. I think everybody decided not to come today. Can you hear me now?
Right, yeah. I got you. I didn't have my speaker turned on.
Hang on, I'm going to take this out. So then, there. All right.
Hey, Heather and everyone, it's Vivian. I just want to let you know I'm here by phone.
Thank you. See if we can get a quorum this morning. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Happy Friday, or something like that.
Yeah, it looked like people were dropping out like flies.
Yeah. Now let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4. We need 3 more people to make it official.
I'll
Roberta,
send a, I'll
go
send
ahead.
it. I was going to say, I'll just send a quick email,
Thank you.
like a reminder. Yeah.
Roberta, I hope that's a screensaver behind you and not the real thing.
Yeah, it's a screensaver.
Okay, I recognized it from our last meeting.
Yeah, just a reminder of what we used to go through every spring, and a lot of people still do.
Understood. Luckily, that's not my Camry back there.
It's our old Jeep, and if you look closely, there's a chain hitched to the front of it, and my husband is out there pulling on the come along someplace.
All right, now 1, 2, 3, 4. We have to 5. 2 more, 2 more.
There's one more. I would have been there in person, except that I didn't think I should share the cold that my daughter shared with me.
All right. Many of us are saving the trip to Augusta today, except for those of us who have to be in Augusta already, Rebecca. Okay, well, we're all here. It's not enough to have a formal quorum to hold a meeting, but we're all online. And Vivian, if you agree with me, I think Ms. Cardoza is here to speak, and we can at least hear from her and see if we get another member on to have the meeting. Does that make sense?
It does. That makes perfect sense to me. Thank you, Jim.
Okay. So with everyone's indulgence, shall we hear? Well, I understand, but we do have several members here. It's almost a quorum. It's 2, 4, 6, 7. We have a quorum. So we are now in a lawful meeting. So let's do the call to order. This is the October 25th meeting of the Abandoned and Discontinued Roads Commission. Happy Friday, everyone. Welcome. And let's have a roll call. Heather, you can take it away on that, please.
Sure. Karla Black,
Here.
Joe Higgins is out. Peter Coughlin,
I am here.
Rebecca Graham,
Here.
Jim Katsiafikis, Chris McCabe is out. Roberta Manter,
Here.
Vivian McHale,
Here.
John Monk,
Here.
Catherine is out. Ryan is out. Steve Young is out. Okay.
So we've had the roll call, the call to order. First item would be adoption of the minutes for September 23, 2024. That was our commission meeting. Any discussion on those draft minutes that were sent out? Any changes?
Jim, on the last page, the little paragraph that says Jim will ask the legislature.
Yeah.
Second line there, it says Attorney General's office, but were turned by the Department of, does that mean turned down?
I think that Heather, is that, yes, turned down.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Good catch.
Thank you. And that continues to be a problem, but we'll talk about that a little later on. So any other changes to the minutes?
Berta had 2 that she sent, so as long as everybody's okay with the 2 changes that she made.
Just to refresh my recollection, those were?
One was for the public use subcommittee meeting at the bottom of page 1. She just I had 3026, but I didn't put the A, so it's 3026 adding in the A. And then the other one was on the term subcommittee meeting minutes.
Okay.
On page 2, she just wanted me to add cooperative extension agricultural mediation program is the one that she had brought up.
Okay, so we're looking for a motion then to adopt. Well, actually, as far as I'm concerned, the subcommittee meeting minutes are adopted by the subcommittees. So
Okay.
they're just here for all of us to see.
Right.
The motion that I'm looking for would be adoption of the Abandoned and Discontinued Roads Commission meeting minutes from September 23, 2024 with the changes suggested by Pete. Is there a motion? Say so moved.
So moved.
Okay, second. All right. All in favor, we'll do the roll call.
Carla,
Yes.
Joe is out. Peter,
Aye, aye.
Rebecca,
Yay.
Jim,
Yes.
Chris is out. Roberta,
Yes.
Vivian,
Yes.
John.
Yes.
Okay. Catherine is out. Ryan is out, and Steve is out.
Okay. We have the sufficient votes. That passes. Thank you. May I suggest Ms. Cardoza's joined us today to address us, if she'd like. I don't. You can unmute yourself. It's okay. If you'd like to speak to us, can we take her out, take it out of order and not make her stay to the very end? Or if she wants to wait till the very end, that's fine for public comments. I was trying to do a favor here. Okay, there we go. Then we're going to make you suffer through the agenda. And so are there any updates and announcements that we have?
I don't have any. I did have 5 calls this month, though, about the abandoned discontinued road with people reaching out and asking questions. So
Well, That's interesting, and it points us to something that was discussed in one of our subcommittee meetings. We'll wait and spring that on people later.
I do have another announcement, if that's okay.
Please, this is the time. Great.
Yeah, I just wanted to let everyone know that this is probably my last meeting. I'm leaving Maine Woodland Owners for different employment, so I'm having to resign my seat on the commission. And I just wanted to thank everyone for helping me learn this stuff as well as I could have in the time that I've been with you. It's a complicated area and had no experience with it coming in. And I feel like I've gained a little bit of knowledge, and I just wanted to thank everyone for your efforts.
Well, Karla, thank you for your input and your work with the commission. It's a pleasure working with you, and wish you very well in your next employment.
Thank you.
Wait, Karla, can you put me in touch with whoever's going to be doing your next appointment? Because I have to have them do a letter of appointment and send it to the Secretary of State's office.
Yes, I'll send a letter to the Senate President who actually did my appointment, so I'll copy you on that.
Thank you.
Who from the association will be taking your
Well,
place?
I think it's up to the Senate President to ask for recommendations, so we're not, presuming that who will take the appointment at this point.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you. Well, we'll miss you, and appreciate your input on all of this. But that brings us to the next point I was going to raise, which is our report. Our next report is due February 1st, and so the idea is to try to get that together. I was drafting it this week, and I just didn't have it ready in time to share, so I apologize. It's been a busy week, and so it's underway, and my goal is to make sure that you get something in advance of our next meeting so that you see it and can respond to it and have adequate time to review it. It was not right to spring it this morning, so the only thing I sent out was a draft of the legislation we've been talking about on minimum maintenance roads and getting rid of private ways and saying public easements. So I sent that out. Also, you'll see this morning that Roberta had sent me something, Q&A, with regard to the limited user highway concept that had been adopted by Maine and found unconstitutional. So that's there. We can have that as part of the discussion. I guess the point is we do have some work to get done during the months of November, December, and January to get that report in. So the next step will be to get the draft report out with the draft legislation that we've been talking about, and see if we can get that in shape and hopefully reach unanimous support of that report and the draft legislation, so that we can then get that to state and local government and see if we can move the ball a little bit further ahead this next session. I think we've seen that this is going to be an incremental series of changes, or a series of incremental changes, and that's just the way it is. And if we can try to make some improvements, then net gain. We'll also have a job, I think, in the next session helping the legislature to understand the issues. I'm sure many of the same committee members will return, but there will be new faces, and we will need to be doing some training and outreach, as well as trying to advocate for the positions that we all agree on. So it'll be a challenge, but I know we're all up to it, and so it's a great commission, and we'll move that along. So for this morning, there's a term subcommittee report and solutions, and there's a public use subcommittee report. They're actually merged in a sense, because the term subcommittee started looking at the terminology again, and one of the things that we are trying to clean up is this private way versus public easement issue and private road. I think we've all looked at this for long enough to know that there are a number of ways that private ways were created, but the term really doesn't have any current usage and hasn't since 1977, except to say what once were private ways are now public easements. And so when we have that private road statute, which talks about road maintenance in Title 23, so allowing people to form road associations, although it says private ways, we had asked for it to be changed to public easement by the legislature last time. They declined to do that. think in part because they misunderstood the term. We're proposing to take that and change it to public easements and talk about that whole section of statute as being road associations. So that was something that was discussed at the terms meeting, and I think there was general agreement with that concept. The idea is that people who live on an abandoned or discontinued road that is a public easement would have the ability to form a road association to maintain it, so that to the extent a town does not, because a town has the option but not the obligation to maintain those, then the private citizens along the private road owners can form their association, can allocate the responsibilities and maintain it on their own. And there's a structure for that. That would be also the same structure that applies for private roads where there are no public rights. And then we know that road associations can form there. So the idea would be that in either instance, we could have road associations take care of those public easements to the extent towns don't maintain them, or private roads, in which case they'd be doing that year round. So that was one thought that came out of it. And also there was the unfortunate continuation of the use of the term private ways in 3105A last year when there was the amendment to recognize municipal authority to spend money with legislative body approval to maintain public easements. That term really ought to be taken out as private ways and replaced with public easements. So those are the things the Terms Committee has been talking about. At the same time, that section 3105A, dealing with municipal maintenance of public easements, is something that the public use, or actually, well, yeah, it's a public use or minimum maintenance group, whatever you want to call it. A group is largely the same suspects of commissioners, is looking at the idea of how do can we create either another class of roads, which is where we started, and this is where the legislature started, with that limited user highway concept that was determined to be unconstitutional. Can we do something a little different so that we could have maybe a longer term certainty of a particular basic level of maintenance, minimum maintenance on a public easement? And so that's the draft that I sent around this morning. Again, sorry for the late transmission of that, but I think a lot of the people on this call were part of that meeting and saw this and discussed this at the subcommittee level. The idea is that, okay, municipalities, with regard to public easements, have the right but not the obligation to maintain it. You go to the legislative body, which is going to be the town meeting in most of Maine and town or city council in some of the larger communities, and each year they would determine which public easements get maintained to what level and appropriate the money for. So it means that you have to make your case to maintain the public easement each year, and so there's no certainty on it. And the level of maintenance could differ, and there may be no maintenance. What we were trying to build into this is if there's a primary year-round residence on that public easement, or that portion of the public easement, then those people could approach the town or the city and ask to have a minimum level of maintenance for that road. And that if the legislative body approved it, then that would continue indefinitely until the legislative body should ever vote differently. It would be less than what is required for a town way. The town way, the street that we all know, that generally paved but could be gravel too, the town way is one that the town or city is required to maintain safe and convenient for passage by motor vehicle. And if they don't do that, you can go to the county commissioners and ask them to order the town or city to do that work. The town is liable for that under the highway defect law. So what we're saying is if the townway is here And the private road is here, where there's absolutely there's no authority for a municipality to do any work. This is something in between the public easement, but it guarantees a minimum level of maintenance, so slightly higher than a public easement. It's an option for a municipality. It's not a mandate. A municipality can go there if it wants to, if its legislative body votes to do so. What I've got here as a minimum level of maintenance would be annual grading, repair and replacement of drains and culverts as required to keep the road reasonably passable, and plowing after major snowstorms, and this is just something thrown out there, with an accumulation of 1 foot of snow or more within any 24-hour period. That's just a minimum level of maintenance that would be done on these public easements as an option adopted by the town meeting or the council. The town could agree to do more than that, but the idea is that this is the minimum, we'll have a baseline, so if you want to have indefinite maintenance obligation assumed by a municipality, this would be the baseline. At the intersection of that minimum maintenance public easement, and we started with public and now it just says public way or private road, because you may have a public easement coming after a private road coming after a public way. Who knows? These things go like that. There would be a road installed by the municipality, which is a minimum maintenance road, travel at your own risk. The municipality would be immune from liability under the Tort Claims Act and the Highway Defect Act for what's there. So the immunity of the municipality for taking care of a public easement is maintained. But there's a guaranteed minimum level of maintenance at the option of the municipal legislative body, that people who have a primary residence, year-round residence on a public easement can ask the town to provide. That's the concept. Sorry for the long-winded explanation, but that was something that was discussed during the committee meeting, the subcommittee meeting, and that I was trying to get it all into the concept into one draft for us all to take a look at and respond to. And so I'll throw it out there. I've spoken for long enough. I'm sure several folks have things to say about that draft and that idea. Roberta.
My main objection is you keep saying it's guaranteed, but it's an option, which means it's not guaranteed.
Well, it's an option, but once it's exercised by the legislative body, it continues in place indefinitely until the legislative body decides differently, instead of having to go every year.
I understand that, but my point is that the towns that are not doing it now probably are going to continue to not do it. I wish that I could have the town of Fayette get in touch with you and or Rebecca and have you tell them that yes, you can do this, because they have told us every time we've asked them, they've said, oh, that just means we can bring the fire truck in. We can bring the plow truck in ahead of the fire truck. Well, by the time they've gotten the plow guy out of bed and gotten him over there, there's just going to be maybe enough coals left to roast marshmallows. So we really would like to have something that gives more of a guarantee, or at least some way to incentivize towns or encourage them or something to actually do this. I know I mentioned last week it would be good to, if we could get a survey out to towns and find out how many actually are maintaining any of their public easements, and if so, how many. I don't know, Rebecca, if you've been able to do anything on that, but I think that would be really useful information for us to see just how big this problem is.
So I can speak to that, Jim, if you'd like.
Please, go right ahead.
So I'm not sure if anyone's aware, but there's an election coming. Now is not the time to be asking a town clerk to do one more thing. After the election, perhaps, but I'm not going to drop a survey to them right now around that. And I did not understand that as a formal request, but I would be happy to do that in the future if that's something that is of value. But I caution you that it has to actually be of value. So it has to be going towards something that is for a solution. I don't know if any added data is going to add that for a solution. I think Roberta, what you get at is something that we come into contact with frequently is the yeah, but you can't legislate a perfect solution. What you have to do is empower and enable and at least give them the ability to do that. Does that mean Fayette's gonna? No, you can't force them to do that. If you would like there to be guaranteed maintenance, then we need a guaranteed road maintenance fund because it's the legislative body that decides that. It is your neighbors. It is the town. And they have that right, but not that obligation, as Jim had pointed out. One of the comments that I would have on the draft, Jim, would be you use primary year-round resident. I would suggest changing that to receiver of a homestead exemption because that proves residency. Otherwise, what will happen is you'll have a bunch of people flipping back and forth, claiming residency that aren't necessarily residents on that street.
Good idea. It's at least a good indicator so it isn't people who just own an Airbnb.
Yeah.
Okay. Other ideas, thoughts? Pete, you look like you're ready to.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I got several comments on the minimum level thing, but let me comment to what Roberta just said and Rebecca. I would agree that it's not the town office that's making the decision. It's the neighbors, it's the town meeting voters that make that decision. So when they're given the option to decide on this, let the people decide. And that directs the municipal officers, the select board, to do what they need to do. The other thing then, Rebecca, if you ever send out a survey, one thing I've, to this day, I'm still confused because every town has town ways, but then there's lots and lots of towns that have roads that they only maintain in the summer, or they have only roads that they maintain in the winter. And I have always been confused on those seasonal roads. What are they actually legally? Are they easements? Because if they were town ways, they really require year-round maintenance. But all these seasonal ones, I've never been sure what they legally are. Do you have any idea, Rebecca? Or Jim?
I'm sure Jim can, but I know how it gets used most predominantly, and that is to limit, specifically in vast rural areas, the amount of road maintenance that's necessary for people who are seasonal residents. That changes. There is a path to petitioning that. But it's, Aroostook County would be Aroostook, and there's also like Oxford and Franklin use that as well, where there is just an acceptance that you have more road miles than you have local capacity to shoulder the burden. So it is a temporary, and it requires legislative body vote and legislative body decision. So there is that involved, but they are noticed. And it's one of the problems that the UT has with kind of county government, because you'll get notice that someone's moved in on a road permanently because the planning goes through the state level, but the county doesn't know until the residents moved in. The county doesn't receive any sort of notification, building permits or anything. That's handled by the state level.
And that's the close to winter maintenance scenario where the statute basically allows a seasonal way that's open summer only. But you have to go through the process. And it is generally for those places where people don't live along that town way on a year-round basis. Roberta?
I think another thing that we could do to help that situation is in the real estate disclosure law, where it talks about notifying the buyer if a road is not maintained by the public. It would be good if we could add in there, or if it's only maintained seasonally by the public, because that's not in there right now. And there are cases where somebody moves in onto a road and first winter storm comes and, hey, how come it isn't being plowed? Oh, didn't anybody tell you? It's close to winter maintenance. So that's something that I think would be helpful, would be just put an addition onto the disclosure law. As far as...
that would be easy to determine, just to finish that thought, because there should be an order that's in the town office, right. The town clerk can point to with regard to winter, close to winter maintenance. as opposed to trying to have the town say what the legal status of a road is, where God knows what the answer might be and where you'd find that. So that is something that could be added. It's maybe a little bit beyond our job description, but if we're going to touch on the road disclosure form for realtors, it's an obvious one that could be added, and it's capable of objective verification. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Didn't mean to cut you off.
The other thing is that where there's winter maintenance only, I think in most cases that's probably roads that come into 3105A, where it's a public easement that's being plowed in the winter. I may be wrong on that, but that's my understanding of it.
Okay. Jim, you want me to add my other comments on your draft?
Please.
Okay. So in section 1, minimum level of year-round maintenance, it's the first sentence says the municipal officers or, well, first off, up above in 3105A, it talks about municipal officers or a village corporation. But down in this minimum level 1, you just have municipal officers and you don't say anything about village corps.
I'm sorry for leaving them out. There are only like, what, 5 or 6 of those,
Yeah.
Rebecca?
Yep. Okay. So that first sentence says, further, the municipal officers or the owners, tenants, and occupants may ask the municipal legislative body to vote. How does it, I mean, I can see the municipal officers, sure, but if it's not the municipal officers, then you're saying the owners or tenants or occupants may ask the legislative body. How is that to be done directly? Is that through a petition, or what's the mechanics of how that would work?
That's a good question. We want to force people to go through the petition process to petition onto the town meeting warrant, which would require 10% or more of the folks who voted at the last gubernatorial election, or do we want them to just request? Because this is going to be, Roberta and David are asking the town of Fayette to put on the town meeting warrant a minimum level of maintenance option, the exercise of that minimum level of maintenance option. Do you want to force Roberta and David to go out and get the signatures of 10% of those who voted in the last gubernatorial election to put that on, like anyone else can add a warrant for town meeting? Or do you want them to just make the request to the select board and then it would automatically be put on the town meeting warrant? Asking that out loud, how do you feel about that? I know how Roberta would feel.
I would love to have it just a request by letter. It should be in writing at least.
Yeah, I don't have an answer for that, but it just seems strange that if the petition process and the 10% thing occurs for everything else, why should just 1 or 2 people be able to get a direct access to get a warrant article on?
So basically it would be the municipal officers or village corporation officers on their own initiative, or these property owners along the public easement by petition could ask the town meeting. That would be your formulation.
Yeah, I'm just saying that it's got to be clearer than what it is now, because I just think it's too wide open.
That kind of makes sense, because you could ask the municipal officers and maybe they'll say, yeah, sure, we'll put that on the warrant. And if they say no, then you can go through the petition process, which might be a good idea anyway, because if you're going to have to drum up enough votes to vote in favor of it, you might as well be out there knocking on doors and telling people what's coming up.
Yeah, that's true.
And then it assures everybody what the process is. Rebecca,
yeah, and it's consistent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I think consistency is good. I think agency is also important. So I mean, I get both sides of that. I think what is easiest for municipal officials is to understand the process. So if you create a different standard, then you create confusion.
Yep.
So this is something they're used to. So either the select board or the village corporation board can, on their own initiative, put this on because Roberta made the request, or Roberta can go around with the petition and help build support or whatever, or not, and get 10% and get that on the town meeting warrant. Okay, so
yep.
Thank you. I think that helps right at the beginning.
All right,
Other
so a few lines down from there where it says, year-round maintenance shall be less than the standard and shall include annual grading, repair, and replacement. What does annual grading mean? I can read that two ways because the rest of that sentence says, as required to keep the road reasonably passable. When you add that to it, the definition of annual could be once a year we're going to grade the road right after the spring. You got your one grading, you're done. But if it's to keep the road reasonably passable, during the summer or fall we have a couple good rippers or the road falls apart, it's full of potholes, does that mean that the road has to be graded again and again and again under the definition of annual?
Or we have one of those 1,000-year storms that's just struck North Carolina, and suddenly you've got washouts everywhere.
I'm also concerned about being prescriptive with what is necessary there and including shall, because then I think it becomes a limiting factor that might deviate away from what that actual need is, like, and may include, as opposed to.
Yeah, I'm trying to come up with a minimum baseline because no one has defined what reasonably passable actually means. We know what safe and convenient for motor vehicle means because that's the standard to which all municipalities are building and maintaining now. But
yeah, that was my other point too. What is reasonably, that's always the word. You always say, what does that mean?
yeah.
There are roads in some communities that are maintained but are functionally non-passable every single spring. So residents now have like a large parking area that allows them to hike in, but there's no way that you could solve the minimum issues without actually, I don't know, building a bridge.
Or doing a lot of drainage work.
Right. So, that's become an expectation of the folks that live there, that they choose that and they understand it. And
so
but,
I don't know if the point here is to say, okay, we're going to grade this once.
Yeah.
Or if we're going to grade it as needed to keep it reasonably passable through whatever happens during the summer, fall season. Because if it's not graded right and the guy just fills in potholes, it's just all those are going to come back again. So what are you going to do? Have the grader come out again? I'm not sure the intent here is to keep having the town pay to have someone come out here just to take care of bad grading work. Or is it just to get the road back in reasonable shape after the winter and you don't get it again until next spring?
The idea is to set a minimum baseline that would allow a road to be a public easement to be reasonably passable by motor vehicle. And there may be bumps and lumps, but is it passable? And so
define reasonably.
Yeah, I understand.
So maybe take out the shall and the annual, so it just says, and may include grading, repair, and replacement as required to keep the road reasonably passable. Then you leave it an option, and then it's as needed, and the town can decide how often that could or should be.
What do we all think about that?
If you change it from shall to may and leave in the reasonably passable, then that does put a kind of a minimum requirement on it.
Okay, so it may include grading, repair and replacement of drains and culvert. Okay, minimum grading, it shall include grading and repair and replacement of drains and culverts as needed to keep the road reasonably passable.
Yeah, do you want the shall or a may?
I think if you do may, then you don't limit what they can do to solve whatever problem may be there to make it reasonably possible.
Yeah. Then it comes down to the town, the Board of Selectmen, to decide. Let them decide what's reasonably passable.
How about if we do this to make sure that we're leaving it open, and may include grading, comma, repair and replacement of drains and culverts, comma, and such other maintenance and repair as needed to keep the road reasonably passable.
I like that.
And
Uh,
if you want a definition of reasonably passable, I would say not like that.
right.
If you have to use a come along and change to get through it, that's not reasonably passable. If you can drive in and out with your Subaru without getting stuck, that's reasonably passable.
Yep.
So
Yep.
we need a towed Jeep emoji to be able to put that into the legislation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Got to throw in a little comic relief once in a while.
Yep.
And the next section on plowing after major snowstorms with a foot or more. First off, I think that opens up all kinds of interpretation possibilities because major is now being defined as 1 foot or more when between snow drifting and whether it's, you take a mile of road, you could have 6 inches on the beginning and 15 inches on the other end. Who's going to make that call? Plus, in the bigger picture, I'm thinking, why are we even including plowing in this whole minimally passable thing anyway? Because now what are we going to have? Someone's going to have to make a determination of how many inches actually occurred during the storm. And is the contractor going to do it this storm, or is the town going to do it this storm? And then next week, it's the other way around. And the next week, it's the other way around. That, to me, this whole plowing thing shouldn't even be in there.
Well, let's think about it, because the idea is to have year-round maintenance because there are year-round residents out there. Primary year-round residence is located there.
Mm-hmm.
So in order to make it reasonably passable, we're also going to have to plow them out after a storm. And it may be that the plowing is done after townways are done.
Yeah,
But
but
maybe
if it's...
not, because the convenience might be this is the next one on the list. You're the plow instructor, Pete. What do you think?
If the road, you have to say the road is going to be done by one or the other. It can't switch back and forth depending on the storm or the snow totals. It's got to be either the contractor or the town. And I'm thinking here, if this is a public easement, I can see mud and potholes and not being able to get to your house, but when it comes to plowing, you're either going to hire a contractor to do it year round, or the town is going to do it year round. And I don't think it should be tied to any sort of inches of snow or time periods or any of that at all. I just don't think plowing should be included in this at all.
So if you're going to live out on a public easement year round, put a blade
Hire a
on-
contractor or do it yourself.
Yeah, buy a blade for your pickup. Roberta.
If we're going to do that, then we need to have some way of showing that the private owner is allowed to plow the road. Because we've run into this on roads that are closed to winter maintenance, that often the town will say, well, we're not going to plow it and you can't either because it's a public road and that would cause liability for the town.
Well, the difference there is, as we know, the town is obligated to maintain and is liable if there's any problem with it. So it prevents people from filling the pothole, from doing the plowing or doing the repair to the road. We're talking about public easements where you do have a right to be there, and in fact, we're worried about your liability, and that's why we're coming up with that other proposal on shielding you from liability.
And
So
I think posting the road at the entries from the public road system is also a good idea, because that provides some protection. At least people are going to know that they shouldn't expect the road to be maintained by the public.
what do you? Okay, so we're calling these minimum maintenance the minimum maintenance option. We're not calling it a class of roads, minimum maintenance roads, but it's a minimum maintenance option. I think is maybe the best way to think about this. We've specified the road repair piece. What Pete suggested, plowing ought to be not part of the menu of what's offered for the minimum maintenance. What do we all think about that?
I know some of the states that have minimum maintenance roads, they say that, or I guess it's the remote residential roads, it says that they will be plowed eventually, something to that effect. I forget what the exact wording is, but the gist of it is that the townways will be plowed first, and when they're done, then somebody will come out with a plow and get you access.
Okay.
Yeah, but depending on where these roads are, if these are out on a corner of a road and you got the plow guy coming out doing all the town roads, you're not going to come back to the shop and say, oh, damn, now we're going to go way back out there to do that thing last.
Right. It's going to be with the sequence of where it appears. Rebecca, what are you about to?
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be good to include it as part of the menu of things that may be done. So you could include plowing on there, but I think that you will find practically that some of these roads are public easements specific to motorized access in some of these camp areas. So forcing a plowing that is A, unwanted, B, impossible, might not be a great option. So, but it would still allow them to assist should they decide in maintaining that to make sure it's passable for the winter traffic.
Other thoughts? Add it to the menu and then you make
The
your
menu
case.
idea I feel is good because represent snowmobile, and I wouldn't plow any of them, but that's not a fair assessment.
Well, yeah, and I think this is only going to happen in the instance where there are year-round residences. And so there are many public easements where there's nothing. There may be a forest that gets logged once in a while. There may be farmland. There may be a recreational easement that nobody cares about in this wintertime because they only want to get to the lake in summer. So for all those reasons, you still have your clear snowmobile path, John.
Sounds awesome. I just wish we could quantify, like Rebecca mentioned this, or Rebecca and Roberta mentioned the survey of how many of these instances exist with full-time residents that actually need these services. Because that would give us a handle of how much work we're putting at for 400 cases or 300 cases or whatever it may be. Maybe I'm asking a lot by that, but is it as big of a problem as we think?
Yeah, it's a good question and a fair question. Maybe this is something we can be thinking about. We can come up with what kind of questions we'd ask in a survey so that after the election, because I certainly understand what Rebecca's saying, after the election, maybe we can put together a brief but comprehensive enough survey that we can all agree on to submit. And maybe it could be posted online to make it easier for public officials to answer rather than get another piece of paper in the mail. But we can try to get some idea of how many public easements there are out there, whether towns maintain them, and to what level, and then how many have full-time residences on them.
That may be challenging. The full-time residency piece might be challenging because that is what's in flux. So a lot of what you hear about are people that have newly purchased, didn't go through what the normal review was, didn't find out, and now are trying to gain some sort of maintenance.
But if we go through your homestead exemption analysis, ask for that, maybe that would help because it'd be easier to flag those.
Yeah.
Okay.
John, I like your comment about leaving snowmobile trails. What we used to do with ours was my husband would lift the plow up a little bit and leave a layer of snow on the road because I used to do sleigh rides. And it made a great packed snow surface to run the sleighs up and down. There was even one year when we had an event planned with sleigh rides, and then we got a warm spell and the snow started to melt, and he went out with the snowblower and blew snow back into the road so we could do the sleigh rides. I don't expect there would be many people in that category, but I just wanted to say I do understand your desire to keep some snow on the roads.
Yeah, and that's understandable, but if it's somebody getting to their house, that's different than recreationally using a abandoned road. And that's what we're trying to sort through here, in my opinion, is these people need to get to where they live, as opposed to we're trying to make one rule fit a mold for everybody.
Of course, we could always do what I understand they do in some Scandinavian countries, and that's instead of plowing it, just pack down the snow.
That works for me.
I thought it would.
I think
Oh,
the
you-
trial attorneys would be so disappointed.
Yeah.
And somewhere in state law, it still uses the word trodden down.
Yep, it's in the snow plowing law. It says so much of the snow shall be removed or trodden down as to make the way passable.
Hmm.
I've got pictures of the big snow rollers that they used to use to do it.
Yeah.
One of the thoughts that I had was maybe in those options for what the town decides they're going to do, one option would be if the person who lives there is plowing it themselves, but it gets too narrow to get emergency vehicles in there, just bring in the wing plow and push it back for them once. That would be a big help.
Well, under the may category, that wouldn't, that could be permitted, that you could, coordinate because it is a public easement. The town isn't obligated to maintain it. You could say, my plow blade's perfectly good 90% of the time, but when we get a 3-foot snowstorm, I may need a little help winging it back. Could you come by? I would hope there'd be that kind of cooperation if folks are going to agree to this minimum maintenance type of thing.
Yeah, but practically, these public easements are probably narrow and not in the greatest of shape. And if you're talking about a plow truck with a wing on it, that baby ain't going down that road.
Because they don't want to catch on something that would swing the truck around.
It's way too big for going down that thing.
Yeah,
Well,
okay.
then at least a bigger plow truck than what the resident has. Back when we used to plow with just that Jeep there, I can remember there would be times each winter when the snow would get deep enough that David would be out there all day doing what he calls herringbone, just going diagonally into the snowbank like this and pushing it back, pushing it back, pushing it back all the way down the road on both sides. And he had to, because otherwise the road was going to get too narrow to get through.
Be one of those, I think we need a bigger boat situations.
Mhm.
Okay.
Jim, I got 2 other comments in here. Did I hear you say or imply 20 minutes ago that this whole process would have to be done annually? Because I didn't really read that
No.
in that language.
No, the idea is that right now with a public easement, if I want to ask the town to do some work on my public easement where I live year round, I have to each year ask the town meeting to approve that. The idea with this is that this option would be a one-time situation. Or at least until they vote otherwise, and so long as it's a year-round residence, there's no reason to vote otherwise. But until they vote otherwise, this stays in place. So I don't have to go each year, and I have minimum level of maintenance to make it reasonably passable.
Okay. The other one was down near the bottom about the sign that's visible, reasonably visible to drivers. Is that some plastic sign 12 inches by 6 inches? I bought a blank down to Walmart and I used a magic marker, which, you see on ATV trails now. Or is this supposed to be a regular, diamond-shaped traffic sign that people can see? Just reasonably visible implies it could be a laminated piece of paper.
I've got a stack of plywood and some spray paint in my garage.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, we want something better than that. Is there a uniform standard for traffic signals or signs that we could?
Yeah, there is. And I could give you the language for that, but it's just.
That's what I'd like.
If we're gonna put a sign up there that says that sort of language and bring that to people's attention, it should look like a standard traffic sign. So I can give you some language for that.
Perfect. That would be great to incorporate.
Keep it simple.
Some of the states that have minimum maintenance roads say right in the law what the sign will be.
Yeah.
I can
Okay.
probably pull up a picture of one here in a minute.
Yeah.
We
I
could
can
do
do a
that
screen
too.
share.
We could do that too. Whichever works. And Roberta, if you want to get me that language, and Pete, if you want to get me the sign reference, that's great. I'll set those out as options. We can figure out which works better.
Okay, Roberta, you do that first. Send it to me, and then I want to spend some. Just Roberta, do your thing, and then send it to me.
Okay.
This is a subcommittee, okay?
I'm okay. I didn't have anything else.
Other thoughts on this? I've gotten a lot of direction here for where this goes, so I'll get working on it, and then I'll incorporate what I hear back from Pete and Roberta, so that way we can send this around the next time. So that was helpful. Thank you. And so that's really all I could find on the subcommittee things, because that's what we've talked about. There's one more item that we talked about as a subcommittee on when we were holding our which subcommittee was it? I think it was October 16. Early on, it was Heather raised the idea that just recently she's received five inquiries, and we've received a number of inquiries from people as to these sorts of issues, and I receive them sometimes as chair, and I'm trying to be careful. I don't separating what I do in my law practice from what I'm doing as chair of this commission, and I try to explain to people that we're not here to solve your problems. We're here to try on a big scope, broadly work on trying to make the law better in this area. We kicked around at the term subcommittee the idea of creating an ombudsman position in the main local road center, Pete. This means you'll want to attend all subcommittee meetings from now on. We talked about locating that position in the main local road center so that you have a lifetime appointment to provide advice and direction to people who have these road issues.
Yeah, Jim, remember that I'm like you. I got 47 years here, and I don't have a whole lot longer here.
I understand, but, for as long as you're around.
So I read that, and I said, I just think back to when I was appointed to this, that, all these issues here don't really relate to anything to do with DOT roads, state roads, or anything. But the fact I'm here, more than happy to help. I could bring this forward, but my gut tells me that this is not really going to get any support.
Well,
I can try, but I
understand it, but it is.
I remember they told me spend as little time on this as you can, Pete.
Oh, well, okay, but I'll bet that as head of the local road center, I'll bet you get these calls.
Oh yeah, every day.
And so the idea is not that you would solve them, but that you might be the referral agency. You could suggest where people could go with those issues, because a lot of these people just don't have a clue as to, public easement, town way, private road, what the obligations are, what the duties are, who to talk to. It doesn't mean you're referring them to an attorney or whatever, but just telling them you need to talk to or you should check with. And so we're talking about that kind of role.
I do that rather frequently, and many times I'll say, there's a lady named Roberta Manter. Sorry, Roberta.
Yeah. I would rather have somebody share the job with me, because right now it kind of feels like I'm unofficially doing it for no pay. It would be nice if there was somebody official that could at least help out with it, and I'd be willing to help them. I'm still learning more stuff. There's somebody that was in touch with me a few years ago, and she just got back to me with more information. And there's some skills that I've learned since I first talked to her, and lo and behold, I think I've got her access, which we weren't sure of before. But it turns out there is a rangeway, which should still run up to where her property is. So, like I said, I'm still learning.
So what do you think of the idea of an ombudsman or serving as a connector, basically saying, here are the resources that are available, being located within the main local road center?
So in other words, I had another one yesterday, people call and they're in a situation, they don't know anything, they moved to Maine, they don't really know anything, but all of a sudden they're in a situation.
Right.
So yeah, I spend time with them and go over with the phone, I try to find any history on it. But if it's a private road or if it doesn't appear to be maintained at all, That's where I usually send them to Roberta because she'll gracefully help these people look into some history of this, which is more than I can provide. All I can do is say, you know, I've got 30 years worth of town maintenance records here, and all I can do is tell you if the town ever maintained it or not, and that's all. As
But
far
if
as
the
the
town-
legal status, I don't know.
Right. But if you had a record that the town had maintained it,
Oh, yeah.
you could then say, but you might want to talk to the road commissioner, the public works director,
Yep.
the town manager, and you could refer people to that source. It's not, you're not
Yep.
throwing anyone under the bus, you're just helping
All
the
right.
public figure out who to talk to figure out their problems.
I do that frequently.
So do you want to make that an official function of the local road center?
It's just,
Maybe we get you funding.
yeah, that would help. So just a little technicality here. Local Road Center is an LTAP, Local Technical Assistance Program, federal program that is funded to provide training and technical assistance to municipal officials for taking care of their town roads. It has nothing to do with private things, but I do it every day anyway, so. Local Road Center is not funded to take care of people on private roads, but I do it anyway.
Basically, you're there as a resource for public officials, municipal officials.
Yeah, because I called the town and, you know, I had enough, and so they call the state, and they think the state's going to step in over the town. And I don't know how many times I've said these words. Look, you need to go talk to the board. The buck stops at the selectman's desk, and a lot of people don't know that, so that's a very big help to them. And others will say, well, yeah, I've already done that. I didn't get anywhere with them. So I figured if I called you, you could step in. Sorry, doesn't work that way.
Right. And maybe if we created an ombudsman position, it might give people the impression that you have more authority to solve the problem than you do. So it cuts both ways. But it would be nice. It'd be nice if there would be a resource that could refer folks to the right place to go, because so many people don't know where to even begin to talk about their problem. Rebecca,
Right.
do you have any thoughts?
Because, Jim, and I'll say that, you know, once I eventually retire here, and once Roberta, if she ever retires from this business, there's two large resources there that are going to go away, and I don't know who. There's no one else in this building that does what I do, so no one has the knowledge that I have here, so there's no one right behind me here that's about to step in. So.
Yeah, I would love to have an apprentice so that I can teach, more than one apprentice, so I can teach other people to do what I do. A couple of suggestions I would have for you, Pete. One is if you've got somebody with a complaint about a private road, if you send them to the Maine Alliance for Road Associations,
Yep.
They, especially if they become a member for, what is it, $35 a year, I think, they can get on the forum and ask questions. And some of the people that
Yep.
answer the forum do a really good job of digging into the history and the bylaws and all that sort of thing.
Yep.
Which has been a relief for me because I don't have to do as much of that now on private roads. As far as discontinued roads, you can always send them to my website and tell them to look at the research tab. And that will walk them through a lot of the things that I do, depending on how ambitious they are, how capable they are, looking stuff up online, etc. There's a lot that people can do for themselves. And if they get stuck, then they can get in touch with me and at least they've got some of the legwork done.
Did you say your website, Roberta, or your Facebook page?
Oh, the website. There's up at the top of the website, there's a tab that says research. And if you go to the research tab, that's where it has those instructions.
Okay, what's the website?
Okay, it's Maine Roadways, all spelled out MAINE roadways, .blogspot.com.
Oh, okay. I actually didn't know that existed.
Yeah, I can send you the link to it.
Sure.
I'm just trying, if it weren't your office, Pete, I'm trying to think of some other impartial place where people could go for that kind of information, where someone could serve as a connector. And, it would be awkward for Maine Municipal Association where the questions might be about their own members, so they
Right.
provide that. Rebecca,
I
what do
mean,
you?
I think that the AG's office has provided similar positions like consumer advocates that they have trained. They have a program for that, but you also have the landowner relations functions as well. But there's a new office that's being created, and it's going to take a while to stand up, and it has a long list of duties that are already expected of it, but one of the intents is that it is a kind of a one-stop shop community advocate within state government, and that's the Maine Office of Community Affairs. So it's envisioned that it's going to be a much more integrated place, but kind of pulling all together those disparate pieces that interact with municipal governments, including grants and access to resiliency funds that might be necessary to maintain some of these spaces. And also, planning, land use, those types of activities will be in the Maine Office of Community Affairs eventually, but they are just getting staffed up. So
Rebecca, is that under the governor's office or the state
it
planning
is.
office?
It's an executive right now. It's under the executive branch.
Okay.
All right.
Samantha Horn is the new director. She's started 5 days ago officially.
Oh,
Okay.
I like the idea of the Attorney General's office. I know they have a volunteer mediator program where they will teach mediators how to step in when there's a consumer complaint. So maybe, I don't know, if they'd be willing to have a specific section of that deals with roads.
I think the difference there is that the Attorney General's office is charged with enforcing certain consumer protection rules and laws. So it makes a lot more sense for us to have that kind of service for Maine consumers. I don't think that, I don't really see how there would be a place for these issues to be in the AG's office in that kind of way. I don't think there would be support for that.
Oh, we could just add that to the Freedom of Access Act, Ombudsman's rule. Brenda Kelty would be thrilled to do this, I'm sure.
Oh yes, you break it to her, and then
I
you
won't
tell
say a
the AG
word.
too.
Don't even mention it.
Yeah, right.
No, but I think the idea is that if someone had the bandwidth to understand the issues and just refer people, not to provide legal advice, but just refer folks to the right agency or body to try to help them along, because so many people just know, I can't use my road, someone's blocking me in, what do I do? Just some kind of relief valve for those sorts of questions that I know Pete gets, that Roberta gets, that I sometimes get, and just to get people headed in the right direction. It doesn't mean you have to represent them, be an advocate for them. It would be useful if we could have that kind of function somewhere. Rebecca, that's a good idea with the Maine Office of Community Affairs. And let's see, maybe we can try to pursue that informally and see if there's some ability to add this to their menu. And that way Pete doesn't have to, I was thinking weekend at Bernie's, we could just stuff Pete and put him by the swimming pool for.
yeah, right.
Yeah, okay.
You jumped the shark there, Jim.
I understand. I'm sorry. So as far as I think that does it for the subcommittee reports and ideas, and this has really been valuable feedback on the draft for the minimum maintenance option. So I'll make those changes, and you'll see that draft go out along with a draft of just the narrative of the report. You don't want to be getting tons of pages, and I don't want to send them. But just the idea that you get the narrative of the report to look at, and these particular proposals for legislation. Do we want to talk about changes to the real estate disclosure form? Or we talk about perhaps asking the legislature to add the winter maintenance if it's known as a disclosure? Is that something that makes sense that you'd want to know about if you were looking at a property?
Jim, let me ask, is this estate disclosure form something that is a standard form used throughout the real estate industry in Maine? Is it based in statute with specifics, or does it change?
Yep, there are two disclosure requirements, one for residential and one for non-residential properties. They're required by state law, and the requirements are right there in the statutes. And so it seems to me that if you were buying for non-residential, you probably wouldn't, well, you might not want to, you care about the proposed to winter maintenance, but maybe you do. So maybe we propose adding it to both. The concern here is that there's a disconnect between what you can easily find and what's asked for in the form. What's asked for the form is whether the public is, who maintains the road, is it publicly maintained? Except it says, is it maintained by the town? They're required to be maintained. And that, the required to be maintained triggers the, is it a town way, is it a public easement or whatever. What's available through map viewer is it publicly maintained?
Right.
Maybe that's what's available now. So many times realtors are just saying unknown, unknown, unknown. So the disclosure is unhelpful. If the form were tailored to what's available through map viewer, then a realtor or a seller could look at map viewer and say publicly maintained according to map viewer.
Mm-hmm.
And at least there's a little bit more information there than this. And you can also, so that's just a thought. Should we be suggesting that there be a change to the disclosure form for that purpose, to tailor it?
So right now, there is a maintenance responsible piece that is part of that.
Right.
So, and means of access. So and it's the seller's disclosure. So if the seller is the bank, which unfortunately, or a corporation, they're just writing unknown. I don't know how you solve that, because these are folks that have a investment interest but have zero understanding.
Right. There's a bank in South Dakota that acquired the property through foreclosure, and or there's a real estate
bought it and are selling it, flipping it.
Yeah, or more and more we're seeing investors just buying residential housing and then renting it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there was that letter that we sent out to the real estate community saying that the map viewer is a good resource for them to use. I would like to see a little bit more detail on that in a couple of respects. One is that if they disclose that the road is a public easement, people don't know what that means. It would be good if there'd be some little leaflet that could go with it or something explaining, if this is what the disclosure says, this is what it means. It may mean that it's open to the public, but nobody maintains it, or whatever the status is that they're listing, there should be some explanation of what that entails. The other thing is that there were a few years there after we got the real estate disclosure in, when I could see a real improvement that instead of getting calls from people saying, I bought this piece of property and now I found out the road is discontinued, what does that mean? Now I get calls from people saying, I'm looking at a piece of property. They tell me the road is discontinued. What does that mean? And I can tell them, if you want a place that's secluded, that's out of the way, that's quiet, that your neighbors aren't going to complain about what color your house is painted, or that your pigs smell or your roosters crow, this can be a great place to live. But you also have to realize that you may end up maintaining the road and anybody else can use it. So at least they know going into it whether this is something they want to buy or not, which will end up getting a better match for somebody buying the land, which I think is a boon to everybody.
They can buy a pickup truck and a plow blade if they want to buy it.
Yeah, and then a few years later, they put in Title 23, Section 3121, which says that if there is no road association on a privately maintained road, then it's assumed that all the abutters share equally in the maintenance. And that was great for the lenders, because now they can say, oh, yeah, this road will remain passable. And that's what they were looking for. But the unfortunate consequence is that it has been applied too loosely, where maybe it's not really a private road. Maybe it's a discontinued road of the public easement. Maybe it was discontinued and there is no easement and you don't have access to the property. And I'm seeing this happen too many times, that somebody buys a piece of property on the assurance that, oh yeah, everybody's going to share equally in the maintenance. And then the road needs maintenance and they notify the other abutters and everybody says, what? We never agreed to that. There's no due process. Who decides what maintenance is needed and how much it's going to cost? It's a really badly written law, in my opinion. And because that's gotten pulled in on top of the real estate disclosure, now I'm not getting those calls that I was getting because people think, oh, it's going to be fine. And it isn't necessarily.
Well, it is until you buy a house on a private road and somebody from Massachusetts buys next to you and cuts off access.
Yeah.
I don't mean to pick on Massachusetts. I'm sorry, Heather.
Hey, I was born here and I moved back, so.
All right.
Well, that's okay.
Okay.
My husband was born in Massachusetts, but moved back because his ancestors were all from Maine.
There we go. Okay.
So, Jim, I asked you this before, but you sent that letter to
Marita.
Marita. You continue to answer that you never got a response from them at all.
Never heard back.
So we have no idea whether they just filed it or they actually sent it out to their membership.
I did get an email back from them recently, and they said that they were going to review it and they were going to go over it and share it with their members.
Oh, wow. That's great.
Okay.
So
That is
I
possible.
probably should have put that in the update. I'm sorry, Pete. That slipped my mind.
No
I
problem.
apologize.
Here's the thought. We brought up the existence of MapViewer to Marita, and if they're going to let their folks know, maybe this is something, we've got a lot on our plate that we'll be talking to the legislature about. Maybe hold off on this and next year look at it and see what the results are, see if it really needs to be fixed.
I'd like to see at least small tweaks made so we're making some progress. At least put in that close to winter maintenance piece.
I think it's covered under the current statute. I think the problem is there's a disconnect between who's driving that market now.
I don't sense I sense some, but not a lot of incentive to try to move forward on this piece.
It would be interesting to see what Heather gets for a response after they review it. Did they send it out to all their people?
I can follow up with them. I mean, they wanted to go over it and review it, and then they never got back to me on questions. So I can follow up and see what they did with it if you'd like. That's not a problem.
That'd be great. Thank
Okay.
you.
Yep.
I really can't see why they wouldn't send it out. I mean, it's great information for people to know. So why would they say, no, we don't want to send this out?
And it comes with Pete's endorsement, so it's got to be good.
They seemed pretty excited about it when I got the email back from them. So
Okay.
Yeah, if you could follow up, we'll see where that goes. But I think if Marita's sending it out to their members, I'm going to suggest, I understand, Roberta, make the tweak, but we're asking the legislature to make a few tweaks here that have maybe a little bit more immediate benefit. And I'm scared that it's going to be difficult enough to educate them about these issues. I don't want to lose them.
Kind of going back to the thought of sending out a survey after the election. After the election is still before the next legislative session starts. Maybe we could have some information so that when whatever we're presenting comes before the committee for discussion, we'll have some more detail that we could give them on it.
I would really like to have some solid questions and an idea of what it is that we hope to achieve out of that data before I go and solicit, because I think we need to make sure that it's captured in one shot.
Yeah, and we don't want to do that twice. We want to make sure we have a tight questionnaire. So if you want to start thinking about what 5 questions, for example, you might want to ask municipal officials to respond, and then we'll figure out who to direct it to. Would it be public works directors, road commissioners, select boards? if you're a select board member, you're not going to be able to answer those questions about public easements. But if you're a road commissioner or a public works director, maybe you could. Because I will bet that in just about every municipality's highway office, whether it's road commissioner or public works director, there's a list of roads or sections of roads to be plowed, because that's what the town considers to be town ways. And then a list maybe of public easements that get maintained. And that's what I would be looking for. So let's figure out 5 questions and figure out who we're going to send it to. And that's something we can be working on in the background as we go along. I think I know who's going to do the first draft, and then we'll refine that so that we get a taut questionnaire where we can go once and get as much information as we can and make sure that it's valuable to us and to the legislature. Does that make sense?
I can give you 2 questions right off the top of my head.
I want you to think about it and write them down first and send them to me, and then we'll deal with it.
Okay.
I know you could do it off the top of your head, but let's get it on paper, and then we can start circulating it so we can really refine that and get the information we need. If we can only go to the well once, let's make sure we get what we need.
I just thought it might be helpful for people to know what I'm thinking, so that we don't come up with 5 different questions from each member of the commission.
So Roberta, I'm asking you to do the first draft, and then I'll work on it with you, and then we'll send it around.
Okay.
Okay, I think those are the other issues that I had. Does anybody have any other business to bring in front of the commission this morning?
I wanted to just reiterate what I brought up last time, that I think it would be valuable, and I know I'm a short-termer here, but I think it'd be valuable maybe at the next meeting for the commission to go over the focus of the LD 2264 that gave us the direction, right, to make sure that we've covered all of the bases. Because I still don't think that we've talked about creating a template for a right-of-way template, which was part of that. So I think there are things that are missing. And I also just wonder on the first directive that they gave to us to talk about the scope of public use allowed and the justifications and ways to improve that. I just wonder if the chart that we have prepared is going to satisfy their request, and whether they were looking for perhaps more recommendations out of that than just a list of the possibilities. So, those are just my suggestions for going forward for the commission to consider.
Thank you. No, that's important. And what I did was, in preparing the draft for the narrative that I'm going to circulate, I pulled in all of those requirements from that LD so that they'll be front and center. And you're right. What was interesting about that first one is they not only were looking at the scope of public use, what are the different public uses for these public easements, but also what are the problems that are encountered, and how do we address those. And so we kind of started with the scope of that use, and then the biggest issue we saw was keeping them in repair, because there are differing uses that can conflict. And with that, we came out with the idea of municipalities being able to post to either heavy vehicles or to all traffic as appropriate. It could be the rainy season in the fall, it could be in the spring when it's thawing, and that way try to preserve the public easement no matter who's maintaining it, whether it's the town or whether it's the individual. So we did that exercise, but it may not be complete, so we'll take a look at it. It's a good point, Karla. We'll review that as we get this draft together of the narrative. The chart was a starting point to identify issues and conflicts of use, and then how to reduce those. There may be other things we can do in the future, but that was at least the first starting point we could all agree on. We'll definitely identify that. As far as the template goes, good point. And I think when we discussed it initially, the idea was we would delegate folks to work on templates for some of those forms, because we may not be able to do that as a commission, but that's something that maybe local roads and Maine Municipal Association could work on together, just to throw an idea out there. I think that's where we were going with it when we initially talked about it, but let's circle back and we'll talk about that at the next commission meeting. Roberta.
I have some examples of right-of-way agreements that other people have used. If it'd be helpful, I can send you a few samples. Also, the other thing that I wanted to mention is that paper that I got you to email out kind of last minute there. Just kind of taking a look at the way we think about the limited user highway as opposed to a public easement. How the two compare. And it's just a series of questions and answers to think about. And I see if you can refute what I'm saying, because to us, it looks like a limited user highway and a public easement are essentially the same thing. And yes, the limited user highway law was repealed, but we've still got public easements. And don't the same things apply? I've been told that you can't use Jordan versus Canton because it was concerning a law that no longer exists. But I have just found a case that relied heavily on Jordan versus Canton. So you can't say that just because it applies to a law that doesn't exist that it isn't a useful decision anymore. So anyway, that's just some questions I'd like to have people look at and think about.
And yeah, this is sort of an ongoing discussion that Roberta and I have been having in the background as we talk about all this. In Jordan v. Canton, the state Supreme Court determined that a law that established limited user highways, a classification of highways, was unconstitutional because what was happening is that you could take a townway, where the town has the obligation to maintain it, and you could convert it to this limited user highway where there was much less maintenance. And no one would be compensated, well, and no obligation to maintain it in essence. And people wouldn't be awarded compensation for that. And so you were basically downgrading the road in front of their house to a different classification of road. And so the challenge was if there was no just compensation, no public process, it happened, was that constitutional? And it was held to be unconstitutional. But the same challenges were brought as against public easements in a case involving the town of New Sharon. And the public easement was upheld against those arguments. In Sharon v. Town of, Lamb v. Town of New Sharon, the idea was, the question was whether that public easement concept was unconstitutional given what had happened in Canton. And the law court upheld all of that against the constitutional challenge. Roberta believes that this is still an issue to be addressed, and I respect it. I disagree, but we can talk. That's what's behind the limited user highway versus public easement discussion.
Yeah, there's one point that you're missing though. If you read the Lamb versus New Sharon case carefully, the court says that the public has lost its rights on the road because of the 30 years of neglect. But what they didn't consider is that if there's still a public easement, the public hasn't lost its rights. The public still has all its rights to use the road. It just no longer has any obligation to maintain it. And that's what you get with the public easement. The public has no obligation to maintain it, but the public still has the right to use it. And that's where the problem comes in.
Well, I briefed the New Sharon case, and I was there for the oral argument before the court. I can't be responsible for their footnotes. But at any rate, I understand. So the idea here is to try to make the public easement concept, which is really useful. The retention of the public easement is really useful where there's been a discontinuance or abandonment and folks don't have another way to get to their property. So from a property right standpoint, an access standpoint, it's extremely useful. The question is, can we make it more useful in terms of maintenance for people who live along there in year-round residences? And that's what we're trying to do here. So if we can try to make a little progress that way, I think that we don't have to address the constitutionality issues and have that. I understand the perspectives, but we're trying to just make things a little better here through this. Any other comment before we go to public comment?
Jim, you said in the beginning you were going to come back to the thing about the budget for the commission.
Oh, yes. Heather, could you update us on where we are with regard to legislative funding? Because I am confused. Every session they say, oh, we'll give you some money. Oh, it's built in. Oh, we'll pay you this. We'll pay you that. They have been backing away from this, it seems. Is that a fair statement?
So apparently my salary is from the general fund, so I get paid. For some reason, they didn't put the budget for the commission, and this is my understanding having talked to the budget people. They gave us like a special funding category. So when I put together the budget this last year and submitted it with the AG's office, DAFS rejected it, and they said, well, you've never been funded. You only get the $500, the yearly special funds. That's it. So we're not going to fund you because you haven't been fully funded before. That's what I was told. And then there's some discussion on, then what do we do? It was suggested, I believe, last year that we should get it switched to the general fund, which I think, Jim, you had put forward the bill to do that. So I think it's something that needs to be raised with the state and local government committee on what you guys want to do and how you want to be funded. If you want it to be out of the general fund, if you want them to provide, because I think it's called special funds. I have to go back and look. I'm sorry, I don't have it right in front of me that they designated us as.
Well, the cover letter that accompanies the report should, in the last paragraph, ask to be funded out of the general fund, so that we can at least get committee members a per diem for the work that they do for the travel time when we have to attend commission meetings. Does that sound fair?
Callie, you're gonna miss out.
We'll have to send you cookies instead.
Cookies are always accepted.
There we go. All right. So any other comments before we go to public comment?
I just want to thank Karla again for your time spent on the commission.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
I'd agree, and I also felt you brought the best feedback from your people of any of us each meeting. That was helpful.
Thank you.
That definitely deserves cookies.
Make a note. All right.
Jim, I have one comment. I think I would suggest that it would be helpful, particularly because all of the submissions are part of public record, to make sure that the author of documents is noted on those documents. So it doesn't look like the chair is sending out a document of a legal opinion that is, it has some issues with it. I think it would be just good to have authors make sure that they're on documents that get submitted so that we know exactly where that's coming from.
That's a good idea. So it could just be from to the commission or to the subcommittee, but have a from line, and that way we know who authored it. And okay, and that'll be part of the record. Good.
I apologize for forgetting to put my name on that when I sent it out. I kind of sent it last minute in a hurry, and I should have put my name on it.
That's okay. This morning I sent a draft out without any attribution to anyone, so it happens. We'll try to make that a practice going forward. All right. With that, are we ready to hear? Ready for the public comment section? The floor is yours.
I assume that means me, Mark?
That's correct.
Okay, hi, my name's Margaret Cardosa, and I have a camp in Wyndham. Our association has 74 owners. We provide 4 public easements, and 2 roads are private that benefit from our public easements. Also a member of MARA, and I definitely have to thank Heather for helping make us connected. I do appreciate her work very much. I have been eager to speak since March of this year and have been in pursuit to this opportunity. I had attended the LD 2264, and I was the one that requested to change the word change the word and to or under section 3105A. Because I'm aware of the word and meant full maintenance by the entire town. And I'm new from speaking to our town councilor, was not very happy about that. So I was happy to see it got changed. I'm also happy to see that it says legislative body instead of inhabitants, because in example, on our road, we had a sewage plant put in by our town on our road, which is about 500 feet to a pond that feeds into the ocean. And we really had no vote. One, because it's a camp, we're not voting members. Two, it was voted by all inhabitants, and so thereby our single complaint of, oh no, not that on our camp road, would not be enough of a voice compared to the entire town. So I was happy to see you had removed inhabitant and had legislative body in there instead, narrowing it down to just a few people. I'd like to congratulate your chairman for presenting to the legislation. I was so impressed. This committee is very well supported and led. The challenge I observed were, although there was a majority vote by your commission, the few minor votes spoke up against a lot of the information, creating quite some confusion for the commission, for the state and local government. So I was very concerned for the sake of the reputation of the decision that was made by the commission, although it was a majority or 3/4 or whatever, that challenge of hearing the contradictions. I'm, of course, an advocate of free speech. The challenge of leadership, though, in behalf of the commission, I would encourage your commission to consider when you want to submit a recommendation by your commission, and there is a minority vote, that allowing your chair to report that and be thankful that your minority vote was heard. Otherwise, it was very confusing, the messages. So you might want to get some mediation on the commission to practice utilizing mediation, since there's been discussion about that. I was also active with the judicial committee that helped with, and Roberta and I were involved for that Title 23, Section 3121. Now, originally the intention was by bank associations and by real estate to create that that law to serve property owners under four owners, whatever. Because if you look at the road association's law of 3101, it talks about if there's four or more. So real estate couldn't sell very easily, and banks wouldn't insure, and veterans were having trouble. So that was created. We had our two lawyers from Mara involved, helping with the write-up of that. There's still a lot of quirks in it that need some revision. But my intention of fighting on that legislation was clearly defining a separation between private road and a public easement. I am very supportive of your decision to change the private way to public easement because frankly, the chaos of the word private and way still can, to the common sense, create confusion. Well, it's a private road. No, it's not. It's a public easement. So the terminologies really are a big issue. And I would be in support to see it change to public easement and work on Title 23, 3121 for private roads so that definition of this is a gated community. I have been very much in favor of, utilizing Title 23, 3101 in this private road section to help those people work out decisions. And I was very happy to see, particularly when there were four or less, they had the choice to be informal. I mean, have you ever tried to have a voting procedural, Robert's rule kind of thing for three people? It's, yeah, you want it informal to make decisions. So I do appreciate that respect of options. I have a hard to say message though. I'm challenged because I'm happy to see the Woodland representatives here, and I'm sorry to see that such an support is departing, but encouraged there will be more that same quality. My grandfather was a lumberjack. So, hey, up there in Millinocket, you betcha I understand the forestry support. If you look at Title 23, 3101, Section 6, forestry is exempt from road associations. And I was quite distressed, and it almost felt like there's more protection for trees and woodland lumbering than there is for children who are abused. I'm a little overwhelmed at seeing the power of our lumber system that is affecting us. So I'm thoughtful of, you've already been exempt from this. So please understand how to receive some balance, but also some responsibility. It's pretty heavy when you see a lumber truck coming through and, creating massive gutters in the roads. So there's got to be some balance and willingness to support each other. Then finally, I'm a little overwhelmed to hearing about the maintenance discussion because, hello, my deed talks about the width of our roads, and this is already a controversy, but there's a limitations going on with maintenance of our roads. Plus the topographic-y. I think you all know what I meant by that word. The land is shaped in so many different ways, and we have no police protection except for our personal property. We have no police protection. So if we're going to be dealing with maintenance, so there's letting the public, free for all on our roads, I'm a little concerned about the requirements of maintenance as well as our safety issues of our neighborhood. And I'm not kidding. My neighbor had somebody dump a toilet on their property just dropped it off, threw it there. I mean, the concern of lack of police protection is overwhelming. So I'm a little concerned on this topic of maintenance. And then 2 more points, if I may, or am I out of time?
We're all here. We're listening. We ask you to be concise, but please go ahead. Finish up.
Okay, 2 more points then. I think it's very important to have a representative of Department of Transportation here. Definitely. Particularly the discussion of public easement. If there is an agreement that public is used, then maybe there's an issue in DOT that has some funding issues and has some regulatory issues and needs to research and have some modifications if it's at federal level. Because if we're entertaining the public on our camp roads, our dirt roads, DOT needs to be involved in addition to the municipalities. And so then finally, I'm very, I recognize the way we run our meetings as a road association at an annual meeting is the same as a town would. So we do our elections there, we do our budget there, we do our stuff, just, or how much we're paying and blah, blah, blah. It's majority vote. And can you imagine telling a town, you must have of your residents, 3/4 of those residents approve of a decision? I tell you, that is totally impossible. When Wyndham had 2/3 requirement to get the public easement for snow plowing, we had somebody from the hospital come to sign the document and get it notarized. We had another person in a nursing home getting signatures. Stop that 2/3 or 3/4 issue and let the locals decide, just like the annual meetings are. If you want a voice, you come to your meetings. You give a proxy, you do an absentee ballot, you do your participation if you want to be heard. But to regulate how people are to vote, how many people must vote, this is overwhelming. So I would encourage you to take a look at that section under 4A where it says majority. Keep it simple. Make it understandable. And that's kind of what I wanted to say. I'm very impressed with your leadership here as the whole commission, the contributions. You're on your way, and I'm happy to see that I can support, and if not, assist or help in any way possible the great work going on. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Sorry to have made you wait since March. Thank you. Anything else for today's meeting? I'd like about 1 week to try to turn everything around in terms of getting the narrative in better shape and getting the proposed legislation together for all of us to look at. So that I would want to at least give you a week, maybe 2 weeks. Do we think maybe setting up a meeting, say in 3 weeks' time, to try to really get this in shape for our report might be a good idea? We certainly don't want to be meeting on Turkey Day, so I figure 3 weeks will get us in advance of the holiday season starting up. Okay, maybe Heather can send out a doodle poll and see when in about 3 weeks we all can get together for a commission meeting, and we'll have the idea is that we'll have the narrative and the draft legislation to look at, and we can all comment on that and see if we can, because a point that was just made was the problem that we had in front of the legislature with differing opinions, which is fine, but when you're trying to ask the legislature to do something, it helps if we're all on the same path. And we agreed earlier this year that we're only going to bring things in front of the legislature that we are unanimously in favor of. And so we'll see if we can try to build that unanimous consensus and in the narrative and in the proposed legislation. That's why it's really important to get out there. I want to give you time to think about it. So does that make sense?
Yep. Jim, I know you're a wicked busy guy with your private stuff, so I think we all could say we appreciate all the work you put into this, even though maybe last moment stuff here. You did what you could, the best you could, so thank you for all the work you're doing here.
Thank you, I appreciate that. But it's a pleasure working with all of you. It's a good commission and everyone's had valuable input, so much appreciated with all your help and input. So it makes it easier to do this job when I can hear back from you and get this. So great. Well, thank you all. Karla, we'll miss you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your work. We really appreciate your participation on this commission.
Yes, best of luck to all of you. These are hard issues.
Thank you. I think, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
Not going to require a roll call vote on an adjournment motion. All due respect to everyone. So just raise your hand if you agree with the motion to adjourn. The ayes have it. Thank you all. Have a great weekend.
Thanks.